Maximum number of connections. Each time you log into the Supportworks client, you use up a license. Let's say you have a 5 concurrent user license. It means 5 analysts can log in, and in some cases, one person can log in more than 2 times or 3 times, meaning that any other analysts who try to log in after the number of licenses have been exceeded will not be able to log in. Let's say, for example, if I've logged into the client 5 times as an administrator, the 6th time I try to log in, I would get an error message. If I put my password here and click on the login, I'd get an error message which says login failure, please contact your administrator. When I OK that and I access the logs, I'll be able to see in my SW server log, I'll be able to see a line which says maximum connection reached while logging in as analyst admin. Now I'm currently using Supportworks 7.6.2, and the application is an ITSM application. In previous versions of Supportworks, the ones earlier to 7.6.2, you'd get an error message which used to pop up on your screen saying the maximum number of available connections on this license server has been reached. Please report this to your system administrator. But now we got rid of that, and the error message is only seen in the logs. This is one of those straightforward situations where you've logged in 5 times into the application and you can't log in a 6th time. There have been cases, however, of people saying they're getting that error message in spite of only like 2 people being logged into the system. The reason why that can happen is because of reserved licenses. Now, reserved licenses are the number of concurrent licenses that can be reserved so that there are always a minimum number of licenses available for analysts who belong to a particular group. If I want to create reserved licenses for a particular group, in my case here, I've got General Support and Service Desk. I've got Administrator, who's part of General Support, and Administrator 1, who's part of Service Desk. So if I click on Service Desk and go to Properties, I can specify the number of reserved licenses for this group here. If I say I want this group to have 2 reserved licenses, I click OK. Now the record of that reserved license will be stored in a table which is called SW Groups. In order to access that table, I'd go to my database query tool and type use SW systemdb, and I'd select all on SW Groups. I can see my reserved licenses have been set to 2 in the reserved licenses field of SW Groups table. What this means is that if I've logged into the client as admin, who's, by the way, admin is administrator, and administrator 1, the ID is an admin 1. I've already logged into the application once as ITSM admin. If I log into the application 2 more times as admin, I shouldn't have a problem unless I try to log in the 3rd time. So that's the 2nd time I've logged in. I've got my reserved licenses set to 2, so that's okay. But let's say I try to log in again, I will not be able to log in because the system will throw up an error saying I've reached the maximum number of available connections. So there, my error message comes up as expected because I've set the reserved licenses to 2, which means as admin, I can only log into the client 3 times. In the rare case that no one is able to log into Supportworks, including the admin, it means there are no licenses available to use. It means the reserved licenses value matches the value of the available licenses. What I mean by that is, in this case, we started off with a 5 concurrent user license, but we used we created 5 reserved licenses, and as a result of that, no one will be able to log into the client. Because unless you're part of that group, like say for example admin 1, you won't be, if you're outside that group, you won't be able to log into the client. Admin 1 has been able to log in because he's part of the reserved licenses group, which is Service Desk. But if admin wants to log in, they will not be able to log into the client because they don't have any licenses reserved for them. When you check the background message here in the logs, it will show you a sentence which says maximum connection reached while logging in as analyst admin. As I said before, it depends on the version of Supportworks that you have. This was an error message which used to pop up in other versions of Supportworks, but in 7.6.2 you just see an error message like this in the server config in the SW server log. If the admin is not able to log in, you can do one of two things. You can log in as admin 1, and if you find that admin 1 hasn't got the sufficient privileges to clear the reserved licenses value here and reduce it by 1 so that admin can log in, you might as well change the value of the reserved licenses straight from the table. Going to the table, first of all, to access the right table, you'd have to type use SW systemdb. When you're in the right database, that's when you type out the following. This SQL statement will set the reserved licenses to 0 for the ID IT service for the ID service desk. Thereafter, when you execute the command select star from SW groups, you should see your reserved licenses has been set to 0. That way, the admin will be able to log in. As I said before, this doesn't happen very often. It will happen if, for example, you migrate data from your live server to your test server, including information in the reserved licenses table. You might find in the SW groups table, you might find that there are values in the reserved licenses that will prevent anyone from logging into the test server. All you have to do is update the reserved licenses value, set it to 0, and your analysts on the test server should be able to log in.